Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else listening, welcome back to Commissions Open Season 2. Character design for the set by Doida Flower on Twitter. Promotional art by Andromeda_Snow on Twitter. Icon created by Shy Starfall. Commissions Open logo created by Melodic Scavenger. And tonight's guest, the artist behind the webcomic Treehouse, and an early indie developer with a master's in math econ, it's AtokNiiro. And here's your host, Doc Conrad. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Commissions Open, an interview podcast all about art in the digital age. Here you can hear the processes, stories, and lives of talented artists, voice actors, video creators, editors, musicians, and many other talented creators in the era of online work. I am your host, Doc Conrad, and today I am... This one came as a surprise that I was able to even get a chance to go ahead and contact you. I got you through D, Super D, for those of you listening. AtokNiiro or Janus? How's it going, man?
Hey, it's going quite well, I'd say.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, who you just want me to go ahead and call you Janus, man? Is that fine, or you want me to call you?
That's fine. I pronounce it Janus.
Janus, okay. Janus.
Yeah.
Where have you been? Where you been, man? and for those of you who don't know, who you are, who are you? That'd be a good one.
Yeah. Oh, who am I? I'm Janus, mostly known as AtokNiiro, and I think the thing that most people know me for currently is for my webcomic called Treehouse, which I worked on, or have worked on for quite a few years now, alongside maintaining a Facebook page for my art.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's probably the who.
and the where would happen to be that you are also you're also a math econ student who does art more or less as a hobby, or do you like, or is it more of like a what would you consider the two to be?
Well, I do art as a hobby, yeah, and it has always been that way, yeah. I have a master's degree in mathematics, economics, and I'm currently doing a PhD in the same subject.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, right now I am on a break from my PhD to work on a coronavirus-related project.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of like doing math econ stuff, like what is the if you don't mind me asking before we go ahead and get into the art, what would that happen to be?
Like just in general, what I do.
Yeah.
Well, it's mainly like like economic modeling, like predicting prices and stuff for different markets.
Oh.
Stuff like that. For the coronavirus project, it's like this big collaborative effort between a bunch of different universities in Denmark, and the team that I'm part of in this big project is mainly actually well, we're not actually doing the modeling. That's someone else's task. We are doing the you could call it, yeah, the dissemination part. So we're making dashboards and plots and stuff like that.
Huh. So okay, so that's more of like a collaborative thing done by like all of them in Denmark. Wow. Like all the universities.
Yeah, between a bunch of institutes and different universities. Yeah.
Oh, I had no clue that there was such a collaborative process like that. And it'd be interesting to go ahead and talk a bit about that more. But the the main thing involved with the work that like most people are most aware of you from is from the your webcomic Treehouse. And you've been working on this project for like I'd say since like the early 2010s. Is that
Uh,
right? Or is it the mid
yeah,
2010s?
I published chapter one in April of 2013. And yeah, it's been work has been on and off on it ever since.
Mm-hmm.
For the first, I think, 5 chapters, I had a pretty consistent schedule where I was able to basically put out a new chapter every 2 or 3 weeks. But this was also, yeah, so this was in the spring of 2013. So I was living with my parents still. I graduated from the Danish equivalent of high school a year before that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a job as a substitute teacher, but I didn't get any hours due to a lockout, and there was a conflict with the government at some point, which
Mm-hmm.
basically meant that the school could no longer afford to have me. So I had a long period there where I didn't really have much going for me until I was starting university in the fall of 2013. So around that time, I basically just started drawing more. I've like always been drawing since I was very very little,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point, I basically just thought, I've always dreamt of like making an actual comic. So even though I have no experience and my my art isn't like super good, I'm just gonna like jump headfirst into it and see where it takes me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then of course then I started university in August the same year, and that significantly slowed down my process
Mm-hmm.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And it's been like you said earlier, the last current update to the webcomic was in 2017. And I don't want this interview to be like what happened. I don't want that to be the case. But I think it's important for everybody to know like I think it's important for other people to know like what it is, like maybe things have changed ever since, like you've grown as an artist as well and you've improved your artwork ever since that point. And you've like ever since like the when you first started the webcomic versus like then it was like the 12 chapters of Treehouse spanned from you said like 2013 to like
Mm,
2017 at this point. And
mm.
it's mostly been on a hiatus because of course, so like you working on university and the work in which you've like you now have a kid, like you've grown so much compared to where you were back then.
Oh yeah.
And there's just like there's a lot that's changed, I'm guessing. But have you been you've been posting quite a bit of art before Treehouse, is that right?
Yeah. I think about like in late 2012 was when I actually started posting art to Facebook. And this was during a time where the whole Facebook art page stuff uh was like, I think what most people who were in the Facebook art community would consider like the golden period of Facebook art history.
Mm-hmm.
So my actual Facebook page is quite a bit older than that. I think I created it way back in 2009,
Yeah.
originally for just for having a page with my name on it, and that was back when I mainly did animations, and it didn't really take off back then, and I really didn't do much with it. And then in 2012, I think because some of my friends were maintaining Facebook pages, and I wanted to get into it too. So I started, like making silly comics. Very early on, I also made some of the hashtag relatable comics, very shareable, very middle of the road kind of content. But a few of those, like this was before Facebook absolutely got its organic reach, and people outside of your page audience would actually see your posts without you having to pay exorbitant prices for it. So I had a few of those comics like get me off the ground and start gaining attraction. And then yeah, that was also around that point where I like started having a sizable amount of followers on my page. Was also the time where I started the Treehouse project, and fortunately it was well received, even though it was a new direction for my page. But yeah, I made some like shareable content, whatever kind of comics in the beginning, and I quickly got tired of it and wanted to do something that felt a bit more meaningful,
Yeah.
or at least more fun to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where Treehouse came from.
Yeah, and
Basically.
well, it makes sense mostly from like your perspective of like you first sharing the artwork and first creating it, and like the first time you made the sort of like relatable stuff. I think that might have been a way in which I might have found you. It's been so long, I can't exactly remember, but in terms of it, it really gives a sense of like artistic style as well,
Mm.
that allows people to go ahead and see like, oh, I like the comic not only because it's funny, but I like the artwork as well, and that got people drawn into you in the first place. And yeah, I definitely think that I definitely think that way back then, art was a lot more visible and shareable before like major corporations decided to go ahead and buy out all the different spaces in terms
Yeah.
of advertisements. And it's really like shrunken down, and like all of it has moved to like Twitter or like to like definitely some other places. But where was it that where is it that like was the point where you felt that you've always thought of this as to be a hobby rather than your actual work as a student, and wanting to get a job involved with math econ? Is that right?
Well, yeah, more or less. When I was younger, I had this dream about becoming a fully fledged comic artist as my day job. Um, but I think around the time where I entered high school, I was already starting to, you know, gain a more pragmatic sense um, of like what I wanted to do, and it turned out that I also really enjoyed mathematics in all the way throughout my education. So I had a gap year between graduating high school and starting university, basically for figuring out what I wanted to do, and that's where I ultimately decided that yeah, I'm gonna go with mathematics.
And you've been taking that approach and sort of mixing it, I'm guessing, relatively well with your with your now like as recent as like 2 days ago, you've made a small game, and you're
Yeah.
working on like becoming a early days of becoming a game dev. um And I want to go ahead and hear about like you've married your artistic art style and like the models in which you've made it with the simplicity and your love of, I'm guessing, math and like it says some puzzle solving as well. But I'd love to go and hear about it.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I always, while working on my comics, found to be like a sort of interesting future project would be to make something interactive. And like back in the early days of when I was working on Treehouse and like thinking of what else this all might lead to, I was thinking that maybe one day I could try and like explore like this medium of comics, like try to do something that's a bit different, because
Mm-hmm.
when I was yeah, when I was making comics, when I was making Treehouse for Tapastic, which is now called Tapas, I also at first I first of all had to decide for what basically the format within the medium. So web comics, or like today have them the how to say this. So today webtoons are very popular, where the the way that the comic is like laid out is like you have this long scrolling layout,
Mm-hmm.
where you only have like one panel wide pages, and you just scroll down, and that's like the, I'm guessing it's because of the evolution of the medium of webcomics, because it's been moving from, you know, people reading the weekly or daily webcomics on their computer screens to people reading stuff mostly on mobile platforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
um but at the same time, my main inspirations were from like classical like comics, in terms of, you know, layouts and stuff. And so I ultimately decided that I wanted to make this in the way that I would make it if it were made for print. So that meant working with A4 sized pages with a margin, and sometimes I would make panels that went all the way out to the page width. But it's not so easy to see that on the website. But if I were to print it, it would obviously come across in the way that I intended it. And during this time, I also thought that it would be interesting to try to do something that, you know wasn't so much like an exploration within the medium, you know, like just that wasn't just deciding what kind of layout do I want to do, but more like trying to do something with a different kind of medium. And I think at the time I was reading a lot about these interactive comics where you can like navigate around panels and they would be slightly moving and such. And I always found that kind of thing to be very interesting, and something that I might try to, you know, pursue one day. And sometime later, it turned into this, like I was considering maybe the kind of thing that I'm looking for is actually more like a visual novel or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, where it is something that you sit and read, but it has a sort of gameplay element. And then, well, eventually, as I learned to do programming and stuff, both as part of what I did at university, but also just from a general interest. It I think I more or less like moved completely over into the fully interactive medium of just straight up video games.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's and now I have I've taken the leap and gotten started with learning how to actually make a game that you can play. And that's my current hyperfixation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said about like the idea of marrying your pointed and specific art style compared to like the way you've worked on the video game that you're currently working on now, which is 01V. It's at least
Mm.
that's the current like is that the current working title, or is that like the full thing, and
I th-
you're gonna make new
I
things
th-
based off of it?
I think I've so 01V is it is a board game, and it's the rules is not of my own creation, but it's based on this actual physical board game that I own, and this obscure rock paper scissors chess like that no one has ever heard about. And when I Google it online, the only thing I can find are like 2 or 3 listings on like a Danish selling website of people who have the same game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like this obscure game, but I found it to have like a really interesting gameplay because it's very strategic and every move really counts. But the rules are also simple, so I thought it would be a good exercise for me getting into getting into uh, getting into the whole procedure of developing games,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Yeah, it's something incredibly unique involved with, like, at least to us as an audience, because like it's an early inspiration for you, but you've basically is it 100% mirrored, or is there like from what the board game is compared to like what it is, what you've made, or is there like, oh, this is my take on it, or is it more or less like this is a something that you thought would be a good jumping off point to go ahead and work on as like a like, here's my way of figuring out something that I'm passionate about, and two, is going to challenge me as like a game dev to go ahead and create.
Yeah, so the rules are the exact same as in the board game, but the visuals are quite different.
Okay.
And it's I chose this as my first project to like pace myself and not jump straight into the huge, very interesting game that I eventually want to make.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, it's better to just get some experience with this, learn how all of these things work. I'm using the Godot engine, which works with this tree structured way of doing things. So understanding all the different kinds of nodes you can use is also a thing. So it's just this entry level project where I'm trying to add I'm trying to add features that I feel I would learn something valuable from for a later project, basically.
Mm-hmm. No,
Uh,
yeah.
but I mean, at the same time, I also want it to be a playable game that maybe people would actually play. That would
Mm-hmm.
be nice.
Yeah.
But it's not the main goal of the project.
Yeah, this is a learning experience while also completing a complete thing and getting to know from people who play it in their own different ways. You get to learn about the process as well of bug fixing.
Hmm.
And because I'm guessing like there's a big difference between creating the game, playing the game yourself, and being like, yeah, if I do this action, this happens. Okay, that's good, and you're thinking about it in that way. But when other people go ahead and play it, they have to realize, one, is it interesting and engaging, and two,
Mm,
if they're going to go ahead and play a different way than you do, it's going to be a bit difficult for you to go ahead and learn things as a bug fixer, and learning about those sort of bugs because of tons of different people are playing it compared to just you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's been a big uh, challenge for me, you could say. I think the most recent part of it that I finished was the tutorial or how to play section which has gone through many iterations to like explain the rules as concisely and still comprehensively as possible. So I've instead of having like a tutorial where you jump into a game and it tells you do this, do that, I have a something that like emulates the rule book that comes with a physical board game. And you're like, where you flip through the pages and it says everything, it lists all the rules, and then you jump into the game and take it from there. But the problem with the actual game right now is that I don't have an AI opponent player. So you jump into the game now, and you make the moves for both the white and the black player.
Okay.
So it's it's not a very engaging game for people who don't know the game already. So that's the current thing that I'm working on.
Okay. Yeah, and like that in terms of like stylistically it's like changed compared to a lot of the base game. But it's very simple and clean compared to like what I would mostly see from those sort of it's very simple and clean compared to what I would mostly see from like different board game things. Like if you were to find it on what was it, the some different like online tabletop simulators or different sort of board game sims. It looks quite different and has a very much like a stylistic a stylistic choice that appears to be very simple and clean, but gives like but like really gives a lot of polish to it. But you're still, like you said, it's still in very early alpha.
Yeah.
Without, and like what would be like being giving a chance to move into like if you continue to work on it, what would be your like your changes, like moving into beta and moving it onward?
Well, the first thing would be to add an AI player to play the opponent's side when you jump into the game, and that would be an exercise for me to like plan out my code in a way that makes it more extensible. So like without getting too technical about it, right now it's hard coded into the player part of the code that pieces are selected with a mouse click and stuff like that. And what I need to do is to like add a layer of abstraction where I have some form of abstract player object that I can add components to, where the components dictate how moves are made, whether it be by the player with a mouse or from an AI governed by some rules. So that's an exercise in basically in code organization, and then the part after that would be to make the AI more interesting, and that would be an exercise in implementing dialogue and having branching dialogue and stuff in the game. So what I like, if I were to like continue this seriously, what I would envision for it to end up with would be that besides the very simple play against the computer, play against a friend, you would also have like this, I wouldn't call it a story mode because there wouldn't be much story in it, but it would be where you play against an AI opponent that responds with dialogue to your moves, and who changes over time, I would say over both like in the span of a single game, but also over several games. So when you play it the first time, obviously this is when the player would not know the rules very well and they're like just learning the ropes, so they would get flawed and the AI would be very cocky and taunting the player. But eventually, maybe as the player get better, they'll soften up and maybe reveal part of their personality that would not be clear from the beginning, and then maybe there would be something that could be called an end to the game. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I
But this would be done mainly as an exercise for me to learn how to make that kind of content in a game, because that big ambitious project that I mentioned that I wouldn't want to start with, but that I want to make eventually, would be some form of RPG, which would of course have a lot of this branching dialogue thing, and I've been looking into frameworks for doing these kinds of things and keeping track of variables and choices and consequences, and having a bit of experience with that through a very closed environment interaction NPC kind of thing with this, I think would be valuable to have. So Zero 1V may become a funny game eventually, but it is all still in the name of learning, so that I can eventually make the game that I really want to make.
That definitely makes sense in terms of like wanting to create a jumping off point for creating the big project that you want to go ahead and make. And I think having sort of like early on learning really will help out in terms of all that. And I'm guessing you may have like in the future further like testing games where you learn about like creating like game devs for like early player movement and all that sort of stuff, and like learning like if you were to have that sort of thing with like having a character out there and actually having them being able to move within a space, or eventually moving on to these sort of things, you wanted to go ahead and create those sort of like that sort of beast is totally different compared to just like having a board game setup where you move pieces, and also having the response of the AI come through as well, and depending on what it is you want to go ahead and do. And you also said like you have a great sense of art, you have a great sense of artistic style, and working on that would be like a great marrying with your love of mathematics and your love of coding. It does make sense for you to go ahead and get into that, but you've also stated that you want to get you learned early on that you want to get the practical side of you were more into the practical work of like getting a you got a math econ degree compared to your focusing on your artistic side while doing this as more or less a hobby. Is making a video game in a similar vein to that, where this is going to be your new hobby that you work on along the side, whereas you have like something that you're mainly doing as well?
Yeah, you could say that this is a hobby thing. So yeah, I mentioned that I chose to go into mathematics for pragmatic reasons, and in a more specific sense, you could say that basically it's for not solely because of that, but a big part of the of what I was weighing between was job security and financial stability. And it's a thing that I've come to, like, at the point in life where I am right now. I'm glad that I made that decision, because I feel like I've really grown into a point where financial stability is very valuable to me as a person. So I don't think I would have what it takes to go be a full-time artist or full-time indie developer. But I would keep doing it as a hobby on the side, while having a day job that I find engaging and challenging.
Psst. Hey, you. Yes, you, with the hair and the face. Come over here. Yeah, hi. Listen, I don't have much time. I'm about to go ahead and reset into the proper timeline, but I came here to go ahead and let you know that I'm from a different timeline where this Doc Conrad guy is famous, all right? He's like super cool and famous, and it could be this future right now. I'm from the year 2022, And that's when he is like, has a fucking million followers, dude, on like every social media. So you got to get into this right now, because this guy, he's going to be big. All right. He's going to be hilarious. And I know he's not right now. He's kind of silly. He's kind of stupid. But trust me. If you follow him on Twitter at Doc_Conrad right now, it's going to be a great return on your investment into funny. All right. This is the funniest man you're ever going to meet. All right. I got to go. I'm going to go ahead and be sucked back into the time world. Hey everybody, welcome back to the middle bit. I'm your host Doc Conrad, and let's get things started, shall we? If you didn't know from the last episode, I have been streaming live on Twitch every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 10 p.m. EST, and Saturdays at a random point in time. If you are listening to this right now, in fact, later on today, I will be doing a stream. Not entirely sure what it's going to be on Saturday, but it's going to be a good one. I know that for certain. Have a lot of fun with those all the time. Having fun playing Minecraft, Among Us, all those sort of games. It's been quite a bit of fun playing games with fans and friends, people that I know, past guests of the podcast, and all that. So, if you want to go ahead and catch me live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 10 p.m. EST, that is twitch.tv/Dr. Conrad. Again, that is twitch.tv/Dr. Conrad. Also, I've been seeing a lot of support coming from some big fans of the podcast over the past few days, and it's been great to go ahead and see. I want to go ahead and get the ball rolling again, so if you want to go ahead and suggest this podcast to anyone that you think might enjoy it, please go ahead and do so. I'd love to go ahead and check it out. And if you're a fan of the show, feel free to go ahead and at me on Twitter at CommsOpenPodcast. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at CommsOpenPodcast, and you can go ahead and check me out there. Also, if you happen to be someone who's watching the podcast on YouTube, be sure to hit subscribe and hit the like button. It would really help me out quite a bit. And if you're listening on whatever app you use, I would love it if you would go ahead and follow the podcast. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcast, anything you want to go ahead and do, just go ahead and follow me there. That'd be amazing. And, yep. Alright, that looks like it's going to be it for the middle bit. You guys enjoy the rest of the interview. Take care. Alright, bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this sort of and this love of math involved and love of art really marry well inside of game development, especially because like it has those things that you've learned and gathered from your time at university, as well as becoming as well as like being able to go ahead and become financially stable and be able to work on those sort of passion projects in your free time when you're not working, because you don't have to stress about like earning like a certain amount of income. Like you're going to be able to get that straight and being able to take care of yourself and take care of your girlfriend and take care of your child. It definitely makes sense for you want to go ahead and do that. And I'm glad that you've been able to go ahead and not only like decide that early on, but also mix the two as well in this sort of sense, because it really lets you feel like it really gives you like a sense of like you're getting accomplished in this sort of like way. You're seeing actionable with a video game, you're seeing actionable like results and actionable like, wow, I get to see like an end goal for this, whereas as opposed to art, it's not as direct compared to, because there's a lot, you don't have to bug fix an art page. You don't have to like do all those sort of things involved with like just your art.
Well, in a sense, you do. Like you sit afterwards, after you've hit published, and you spot all the errors, and you think to yourself, "Oh my god, how did I not see this while doing the line art?" But yeah, one thing, one important consequence of this decision, obviously, is that because of this, because of like having this be strictly a hobby, I don't have very much time or energy for these things, and that's also like the the main reason why Treehouse has not received very many updates, simply because like I have so many things going on, and I'm at the same time the kind of person who I would say that my biggest talent is procrastination, disguised as productivity. So I have a bad habit of taking on new projects, like learning a new programming language because I like the syntax, or now I'm learning video games instead of finishing Treehouse, but it's the motivation and the energy like comes and goes. Right now, I have energy for learning about games, and as I'm doing that, I'm like slowly. I have been over for some time like lamenting the fact that Treehouse has been at a standstill, and I have like a half finished chapter 13, um, and well, there are many reasons that I tell myself are the reason why Treehouse hasn't been updated. One very like concrete reason right now is that my tablet pen has been abducted by my daughter, and the search efforts have all been have not turned up anything. So until I find that, that's like a hard lower limit for for when I can get back on that horse. But another thing I guess is uh, more in the more on the level of yeah. Okay, without spoiling too much, I can say that chapter 13 of Treehouse is gonna take the series in quite a different direction than what the readers might have been expecting. And I think that also kind of affects my drive, because I guess I'm a little afraid of how it will be received.
Mhm.
Uh, and then there's also the whole it loops, and this loops back to the whole thing about procrastinating with new projects, is that I tend to I think I tend to burn out a bit quickly on things, and Treehouse for many reasons take a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of time. I think my process could definitely be optimized quite a bit. And back when I didn't draw as many details, I would pump out a chapter in 2 weeks, whereas now I would be I would be considering myself very productive if I can make 2 pages in 2 weeks. And it's just yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that have to come together. Like the planets have to align in a certain way for me to be able to work on serious comic projects currently. Obviously, I have to have the time and energy, which is in short supply between university and my daughter, and I have to have the motivation, which comes and goes as it pleases, and and so yeah, I guess I've just been finding it easier to do something new, which in this case has been working on a video game.
Mhm.
But that's not to say that Treehouse is abandoned an abandoned project, because I still do wanna continue doing it. But right now I just feel more uh how would you say, um I feel more engaged in pursuing this other thing right
Mhm.
now.
It like I said, it makes sense why you'd be so interested in game development and working on these sort of things. And I've always seen you as an artist who is invoked by passion, rather than like wanting to put your wanting you only want to go ahead and put out work that you think would be quality.
Mm,
And I think that has there's a lot of artists that like don't follow that specific philosophy. They want to they do stuff to make things out of practice, and
mm,
post a ton of different things, post a ton of different pieces, um, just to like get reception and get either not even feedback, but like the ability to like have consistency in their work. Whereas you are an artist, you are an artist. I'm guessing a man of passion involved with the specific work that you push out. Whatever gathers your interest, like that's what you'll go ahead and work on, and whatever is engaging to you, that's what you put your effort into. But you
yeah.
also have like the other work that you do involved with like schooling and all those sort of things. So it's really difficult. It can be really difficult to go ahead and mix all those things, just in general. But before we've talked quite a bit about your work into game development. We've talked quite a bit about your work in Treehouse, and of course I'd love to hear. Like any little bit of juicy details you love to have. But what I'm most wanting to know is how have you been? How has this sort of these sort of like past few years that you've been especially on Facebook silent, and you're wanting to go ahead and take care of take care of your family and that sort of stuff. How is that how have you been?
Um, well, in a single word, better, I'd say. Uh, and I'll explain what I mean. Um, when I started working on Treehouse, I'd put out like a chapter every few weeks, but I would also like put all my waking hours into it. And when I then went on to university, of course, there was a few, there was much fewer hours, but I would still put all of them into it. And as a result, I think I kind of wore myself down physically and mentally, and I tended to get very little sleep. So I would like I remember specifically one time where my sleep schedule was so offset from a healthy one that I ended up doing an all-nighter in the weekend to to realign and be able to get up in the morning the following Monday. And yeah, it was, I'd say it was a very unhealthy way of doing stuff, and I still still didn't put out much volume anyway. But this was at the time where I was single and having no responsibilities aside from myself, where I was able to do this. But when I then met and moved in with Line, my girlfriend, this changed, uh, and for the better, because suddenly I had other uh, I had other people that I was responsible for and had to like, you know, I had to take into consideration. So I couldn't just stay up all night and draw comics,
Hmm.
uh, and I couldn't just go AWOL for a weekend to work on stuff. And as a result, I started sleeping, like actually sleeping 8 hours a night, and I started getting less stressed. as well. I think yeah, around in the early days of university, I tend to be very stressed
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time. Not just because of doing art in the late hours of night, but also because of like it was just the added effect of everything at once, and then with the lack of energy that came from not sleeping very much, it there was one point where it became a bit much for me in my third semester.
Yeah.
But after moving in with Lena, I started getting on track again, and this of course also meant that the the amount of work that I put into my artwork took another hit. But at the same time, I also felt relieved in a sense where uh, I'm not trying to make it sound like that I well I want to say this in a way that doesn't make it sound like I was happy to abandon my projects and just relax. But
Mm-hmm.
in effect, that was kind of what happened. Like I realized that I can't be everything at once, so I might as well not worry too much about it. And the people who follow my work and like it will understand that that's just how life is. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, I can't devote as much of my person into that side of me as I could before. And maybe at some point, hopefully, I'll be able to find a balance where I can like get the things rolling again. Uh, but even though it meant that I had less time for my creative endeavors, I feel like it was a much better place for me to be in. Uh, just from yeah,
A mental
for me,
perspective. Yeah.
yeah.
Um. No, it's very important for you to have that sort of it's incredibly important for you to have that sort of life balance that is really needed, especially when involved with you have like you fully changed from the start of this comic to where you are now.
Mm,
You've changed as an artist. I'm looking back at like some of these like pages while I'm just going through the interview, and like these pages are like they're still really good, but you've clearly improved like a lot.
mm,
You've done a lot of different like you started early on in the early days of web comics and creating these sort of things. You've created manga style web comics that have been made for a while. You've updated this art like quite a bit. Um you've changed and you've grown as a person. You've grown quite a bit from where you first started. You've worked on this for however many you've worked on this project for years, Treehouse. You've worked on your artistic creative endeavors for years. Um, you've you've changed a lot as a person. You've grown so much, and it makes sense for those priorities to go ahead and shift and change. Especially when your number one priority is making sure that you can provide for the people around you, and you can provide for yourself, and keeping that stress away.
mm,
And like it's important, but it's also important that you want to go ahead and keep yourself engaged with creating with creating things as well. You've always wanted to stay creative. I've seen that. I realize that now even more so with your latest endeavor into game development. You're
mm,
always wanting to have somebody who is very creative. You're always somebody who is incredibly creative and wanting to always innovate and improve. And you've dedicated a lot of time to it, but you realize that it's not 100% sustainable, especially when you're being pulled in a different direction with your art. With it'd be different if you were in schooling for art and you wanted to focus on it, because
mm,
then you'd be able to go ahead and like you'd be able to go ahead and spend more time developing it and understanding the different sort of processes in which you balance yourself and different sort of like artistic takes. But this has been wholly on your own, and that's like, and you, of course, you've learned from other people and other places that you've learned and other different inspirations, but it's always been something that it's always been something involved with passion. And that is, I think, is something that's like, that's a calling back to what the art pages were. In a sense, like those art pages back then were a sense of like creating things based out of passion, and people seeing that different artwork and seeing those different and seeing that and enjoying it so much and loving it. I mean, I sure do. I sure always have. And I can go ahead and say that like the passion which you put into your work, no matter it be your artwork or your game development or your specific pointed learning about like how rocks spawn in Animal Crossing. Like you are a man of passion, and I absolutely love to see it. You are somebody who you've grown so much from when I first saw you. I've grown looking at your artwork and seen it as well. And it's something that a lot of people need to recognize, that while these things change, you're still you. You've always had this bit of you. And while you have grown and while you have changed, there's still like parts that have stayed with you. That creative and artistic side of you has always stayed in there. It's stayed in there from all of the artwork that you've made, all of the like passion you put into your game development, and I'm sure the same passion of taking care of your new family. But from all of your fans who have known you from Facebook, known you from your your editing, your great editing of Animal Crossing, to everywhere, like, who have enjoyed your comic, I can 100% say that you know that what you do is right, and you know that your work is going to be. I know whatever you pursue next is going to be the right decision for you, because I know that your passion always gives results of making something that you will enjoy and you will love and other people will love alongside it. And yeah, I definitely can. I can definitely see you moving into different mediums as well, of game development, of artistic styles, everything. You as a person have been. I've been a big fan of you, man. I'm sorry. I just like had to get that out there.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. But no. If what would you say to somebody who is here's an interesting question. If you had to go ahead and talk to yourself back when you were first choosing your university, would you still go down the same path, or would you choose something different?
That's an interesting question. Well, I can give you an asshole answer and say that that line of that kind of thought experiment as a parent is a gigantic nightmare, because like the whole, imagine you were you 5 years ago, what would you do different? I would do nothing different. I would retrace the exact same steps to ensure that my daughter would exist again. And like, imagine if I wouldn't be able to do that. But in a more generous sense of that fantasy, I'd say I'd probably ask myself to be a bit more realistic about what I'm able to like, how many balls I'm able to juggle at once. Like, you know, at at any given point, if I'm both doing a degree and I have a spare time job, and I'm doing a comic and I'm learning 4 different programming languages, and I'm looking for love, and like it's too many things, and that's what has, as I mentioned before, what in the past has cost me sleep and mental health is now just simply costing me output. So I'm not outputting as much because I'm prioritizing differently. And I think that while I'm happy that I have published as much of Treehouse as I have, even though it's not as much as I would want to have published, um, I would have advised my younger self to plan out that whole balance a bit more before jumping into it, because as fruitful as the comic endeavor has been for me in many cases, I think it would be, it's not something that I would suggest to someone that I know, like, have do this thing with hyperfixating on something and like jump from project to project to like go into. Well, not that I wouldn't recommend going into comics. I would absolutely recommend anyone who's doing art to make a comic, because it has been the single best way of improving in many cases for me as an artist. But just be conscious about what the cost is. Like for every choice that you make in life, generally, like you have to choose something. You have to choose between things. You can't have your cake and eat it too every time, because then you'll just end up like being overstuffed from all the cake. You know.
Yeah.
And that's not a good position to be in the long run. So I definitely say that figuring out a healthy balance is definitely key to surviving in this sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way for us to go ahead and wrap things up. We're getting really close to the end of the interview, but yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and say, Janus, that your work has always been something that's been a constant initially in my life from an early stage on. I absolutely loved your work that I saw consistently on Facebook, and I'm so glad I refound you again. And
Thank you.
I'm so glad I found you on Twitter as well. Because seeing your posts remind me of that time, and I definitely think that like I said, your work is that of passion. Your work is that of, like, you call it hyperfixation, and it's something that you wanted to balance out, and it's a good thing for people wanting to go ahead and figure out those things and balance them out properly. But if they didn't give results, then then they wouldn't be. You put in a lot of hard work and effort into it, despite the toll on you, and it's definitely been like something that has impacted a ton of different people. And I'm definitely one of them. So with that being said, thank you so much for doing this interview. I'm so glad I got a chance to go ahead and hear from you what it is has changed, what it is you're doing, how it is you're doing, and I'm glad you're doing better. Is there anything else you want to go ahead and say before we wrap things up?
Well, not really. I think I got to say most of things. Well, I guess for those concerned fans who, if it didn't if I didn't say it clearly enough, for the concerned fans of Treehouse who has not seen any updates since 2017, and actually, if you go and look on the upload dates on Tapas, it's 2015, but that's because it only shows you when the first page was uploaded, not the updates. But for those of the fans who are concerned about the fate of Treehouse, I'd say that Treehouse is still very much on my radar, but it's the kind doing full scale comic work right now is too much energy, motivation, and time resource intensive for me to do right now. But it's the kind of thing that I constantly think of. I really wanna get back in there and see where it takes me. But I a few years ago, I would try to promise to like work on it soon, or like say, oh, definitely in this month I'll do some work on it. But I simply I think I'm in a place now where I simply cannot promise that. Basically because of what we were talking about, that I have to give something up to function. And right now I'm giving up the development of Treehouse to develop some other things. But at some point I am gonna try to return to Treehouse and continue it. So yeah. But I hope that those that enjoy Treehouse and my work otherwise will also enjoy the many other projects I start, and hopefully some of them I'll finish, and if not, then hopefully at least I'll learn something.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I think a lot of your fans are as well. And with that being said, thank you so much, Janus. It really warms my heart that I was able to talk to you and get a chance to go ahead and talk to you, man. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.